Hello, my name is Charlie Reis, and you can see my email. This is a presentation about XJTLU, Xian Jiao Tong, Liverpool University's work on artificial intelligence. My name, as I said, is Charlie. I'm director of the Educational Development Unit at XJTLU. And a little bit of background about me and technology initiatives, since we're talking about artificial intelligence today. We were doing an initiative before COVID on H5P and interactive software based on Web 2.0. And the difference between Web 1.0 and 2.0 is Web 1.0 is more static, more like a billboard. Maybe it has video, but Web 2.0 is interactive. So this is what we were working on when suddenly, like everyone else in the sector, we were swept up in COVID and had to do an online pivot, after which we were supporting online teaching, blended and high flex learning. I think XJTLU and EDU has shown a lot of leadership in terms of high flex because we've been doing things like experimenting with different types of presentations, different types of delivery, as well as hardware such as different cameras and microphones and things to situate instructors better and students better. So it's a more natural interaction, and we're continuing this work. We're now a multi-location campus. We have also submitted a few times to the University Online Blended Learning Strategies, where the form follows the function, so the type of learning would determine how we would ask staff to implement it. So independent study can be done digitally, asynchronously, on someone's own, maybe debate and discussion, much easier if people are in a room together at the same time. I didn't, before February, have any AI experience, but I kept hearing, like everyone, the news about ChatGPT-3, as well as murmurs from across the university that we need to ban this and that we need to lock students in a room and go back to very traditional assessments. I did not enjoy either of those themes, and so I asked to get in front of this and lead our working group so that I could actually steer it in a way and sort of lead from below. And those themes will come through later in this talk. The challenges as a university we faced, as I just mentioned, there was noise being made, and this is the first challenge about bans or antiquated assessments. And if you think about a SAT exam, that's really the least authentic type of assessment. People don't often do this in the real world. So I wanted to not lose all the gains we'd made in thinking about pedagogy and learning just because of something like AI. And, I just said, oh, we were doing H5P, then COVID hit. We have just gone through disruption. We saw how it turbocharged our technology initiatives. So hopefully this will do something similar for different forms of learning and teaching, such as students as partners and authentic assessment. Another challenge we have, and this is the second one, which I think a lot of universities are facing, is there's a lack of experience and knowledge with generative AI, both with students, staff, and certainly with our administration. So we're looking at not only upskilling ourselves and figuring out how to adapt to these tools, but how to be experimental in having everyone learn about it and thinking about how to educate people in such a way that this isn't a real burden and they don't get more tech fatigue, which is common across the sector as well. Another point, and this is the third one that's really important for thinking about something like generative artificial intelligence, is what it's going to do to assessment and academic integrity, given how easy it is for people to produce content that you can't detect as plagiarism necessarily or not as students' original work. So we are looking at what works, what doesn't work, what our expectations need to be and maybe to shift, and how we can talk to students about the value in actually cognitively participating and doing their own work rather than just turning in something because it's easy to produce with an AI. And then finally, the last bit, there are always going to be people more excited than leadership at a university. So for us, I thought our leadership was a bit timid in not announcing, say, our AI policy that our working group suggested and that was adopted, and just moving a little bit slowly in the response. And I think if you think about, I just mentioned pushing things like students as partners or authentic assessment, the necessity of agility within universities and large institutions is also essential to people's survival in a context of continued disruption, which is how most people see the future. So I think our work on AI also shows a great example of how you can be agile and add value quickly within the framework of an institution. So that's what I just went over. I know you can't see this because it's small, but our timeline basically before 2023 spring, so this spring, we had an AI policy, an academic integrity policy, pardon me, that dealt with fabrication of data. And so a lot of that is valid for AI-generated content, and we're just looking at the smallest changes we can make to existing policy, which is what everyone would do. Then the calls for bans and lock them in rooms, which reminds me a lot of Donald Trump, with locking people in things. So we started organizing continuing professional development based on AI, and we have never had this kind of response from staff. It was literally, I would say, 5-6 times the amount of people engaging than ever before, because this was an immediate need that was relevant to them, which also is a signal to me about what can we do to be more relevant to staff, deal with their actual challenges rather than a lot of the routine stuff that we want, or balance those out. Then for the working group, we had 4 main areas, and this was by design. First, we wanted to recommend policy because it was necessary. We needed some sort of official statement so that we knew what the university was going to do and say, and so that we could help with this. So our basic policy, which I'll show you in a moment, was you can use any sort of AI on an assessment as long as you have permission or have declared it. And if not, the assumption is you haven't used AI. And originally we thought this should be at module level. And then we thought if we have one student who has several teachers or several courses in the same program, there might not be coherence. So we asked to move that up to program level with perhaps distinctions from module to module. So that is our current policy. And we're going to see what that did or didn't do. Then we created guidance for staff and exams officers. So how to write academic integrity statements to account for AI-generated content, how to talk to students about learning, and a bit on how to pivot assessments to deal with this. But that was very difficult given that it was during the actual semester and they already had to start their module marking reports. Next piece was student guidance, because if students are not literate with these things, they're going to make mistakes and be totally unaware. And for me, I don't want to punish students. I want to help them. I don't want to work against them or fight them. I want to work with them. And so generally, the tone of people in higher ed talking about academic integrity, I find unacceptable, because it's very much, we have a hammer, we're going to beat you with it, when it should be, this is us and why we do the things that we do in the way we do. We stand on the shoulders of giants, blah, blah, blah. So you need to do the same to be like us. You're doing a smaller version. So I think students' guidance and literacy is key, and also students are guiding us. So this is reversed as well, because they have the time and the energy and they're playing with these things, and that'll become clear. And then finally, opportunities means opportunities for staff. At least our university is growing so fast, we have run out of physical space for offices, for classrooms, for a bunch of stuff. That will not change, regardless of the fact that it's now impossible to do learning and teaching, and the people doing learning and teaching have no time for research. So what can AI do to make people's lives easier in terms of perhaps course design, but generally AI is not that good at that, at least not yet. Or materials design, again, I think a Google search is probably more effective than AI-generated content there, or just looking at OER, Open Educational Resources. But with feedback and assessment, particularly for large groups, things like chat bots or sort of automated question and answers, like an FAQ partner, and then going to digital devil's advocate or digital TA. All of these are things we're looking at different ways. And so I'm sure that's much like what you're doing. Then in May, we kept doing continuing professional development, and we're continuing. So Tuesday, we have a stress test based on something you guys did a few weeks ago. So staff will come and play with ChatGPT with their assessments and see what happens. Because for us, also, we're behind the Great Firewall. So technically, no one in China is allowed to access ChatGPT, which is totally meaningless. It's just technically. But because we are accredited by the MOE in China, we cannot break any Chinese law or do anything that's sort of unethical or antisocial. So we have to account for this in the way we present ourselves and how we deal with tools. That being said, there are lots of tools that are operating using things like ChatGPT that are perfectly accessible in China. And then we also accredited a micro-credential. I'll show you the rubric for that and tell you that story in a little bit. And then in June, I got verbal okay to do an experimental research group. And so our student computing club had approached our executive president, Professor Yeomin Shi, and said, oh, we're very interested in AI. What can we do to have more staff access and to work with you to explore this and figure out how it's going to impact education? Nobody paid attention till it came down to me. So 2-3 levels of management. And then I thought, great, this is exactly what we would want to do. We're going to take your idea and work with you, but it's going to go slower than you guys want because you're young and excited. So hopefully that will start in September, and I'll give you more details in a moment about that. But the idea is we are trying to cover lots of bases as we go forward into the unknown. So part of this is, what is our policy? How might that change? What is this affecting? Mostly assessment and learning, and how we might have to pivot. What are the people's literacies that are the major stakeholders, being student, staff, and then I would throw in the administration, because they're not going to be learning this. They're going to be listening to other people, as well as industry, I would put there. And then finally, what can we do to recognize this? So the micro-credential was very much filling a gap in terms of what we can do to recognize staff and give them some credit for doing things that might be very hard, but that are very interesting or very time consuming. And then finally, thinking about incorporating students and actually using them as partners to explore this, because this is new for everybody. But this also, to me, is one of the better models of education. Like if I said earlier, what can we do as a sector to be more engaging, which is the root of all of our problems in some ways, and have people work with us the way we want them to work? Well, it's probably by being less lordly, having less distance between us and them, or that's one way to do it. So I want to show, I hope if I'm successful, the university students as partners is actually not only viable, but intensely effective. It's just a mental shift and maybe a lot of initial work for all of us. So, number one, the micro-credential. It's called In Using AI to Support Learning, Teaching, Assessment in Higher Education. We designed this with Rob. So we very much wanted to partner with our partners, UOL, because we thought this would add gravitas, weight, as well as a lot of good perspective. And so I already mentioned it's alternative credentialing for CPD. I have plans for lots of micro-credentials, or 3 at this point. If you don't know what a micro-credential is, it's a certificate, basically, or a small micro-credential. The QA for any micro-credential comes from the issuer. So the QA for our micro-credential lies with EDU in XJTLU and with CIE at UOL. And frankly, we're happy if you want to take some of this and just award the micro-credential. That would never be a problem for us. Where this goes to a badger, so a website that uses blockchain technology to protect the integrity of the certificate, that's why it's a micro-credential rather than a certificate. This was originally used for people in the tech industry so that they could upskill very quickly at smaller things like using Python and be able to prove I'm not just claiming this, I've actually been recognized by a body that's serious and checked. So we are that body, or you are that body for this micro-credential. The other micro-credentials we're thinking about are incorporating SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, into curriculum redesign. And I can't remember the other one. Leadership. We want to start a leadership development fund, and not every leadership initiative needs to be funded. So before that will be this micro-credential and experimental leadership initiatives at our university. And again, using a new way of credentialing to fill a gap in our continuing professional development. So our microcredential is also aligned to PSF 2023 of the Professional Standards Framework from Advanced HE. So it can show some of this as well. We might put more in later if we're seeing more, but we wanted at least to show, oh, this also aligns to other bodies. And then partnering with Liverpool, again, this was mainly from Rob. A lot of the EDI concerns you'll see in our rubric, which is the next slide, came from you guys because we were a little less concerned about that. And EDI in China is really basic compared to in the UK. We designed a normal rubric from fail to distinction, the way we would use on our PG Cert or any graduate degree, because this was pegged at FEHQ7 or master's level, because that's appropriate, we think, for staff. Then we realized there's no distinction in awarding a certificate from pass to distinction. So we just used a single point rubric based on merit. And at this point, I've already asked the person giving our Learning and Teaching Award to the recipient who used AI in learning and teaching to see if they can be the flag bearer for this. So we have one person who won a different award already getting our micro-credential to show that it's real, it's there, just to help with awareness. Because if no one knows about this, there's no dissemination or uptake. But that's all going to happen in September in terms of launch events, etc. So here's the rubric. The colored part is our rubric. You can see there are 4 different categories: design and plan, implementation, reflect on impact, and future orientation. So with design and plan, it can't just be throwing AI at something. That is a stupid use of tech. We see this all the time with technology. I would say anybody in XR, you see this constantly. Everything needs to be 3D suddenly when it doesn't. So we didn't want people just putting in AIs because it's new. We wanted some pedagogical or issue that was best solved through an artificial intelligence. And that had to be based on some sort of information or evidence. So again, the plan to use AI is based on a variety of evidence. And then they're thinking about ethical use of AI, potential bias in AI, and AI GC. And this is where actually the failures of AI might save education. If AI GC, AI generated content, is always biased or uninformed, then we still have a very strong role as higher ed. And actually, when I think about what like a large language model does, it's informed by its training data, which is very public. And so it's not going to be very good in terms of expert knowledge. So it's getting better and better, but the same sort of assumptions that anyone with common sense makes about our disciplines, AI will probably make the same mistakes. So there's room for us to just shift in terms of how we deal with content, and it asks then students to be much more critical, much more quickly, rather than gaining knowledge because you can just create it. Then they have to use knowledge, so they'll have to have it because there's still a strong place for knowledge to make judgments and do other things. So that's design and plan. Implementation, we want to know it was demonstrably successful or not, really. Positive response to obstacles with focus on inclusivity and accessibility. So again, that's those last parts, the impact of Rob on this. But what we wanted is really a warts and all picture of implementation, because so much of our literature is just, oh, look how successful and great I am, look how smart I was. That's no one's story. All our stories are, oh my God, it was so hard, I can't believe I finished, or something like that. So we want to know what are the pitfalls and other things so we can share the process as well as the output. Then a reflection on impact. We want, again, sources of evaluation, engagement with data if possible, and attention towards unintended consequences, both positive and negative. And once again, this mirrors how AI has been affecting not only our sector, but the whole world. It's doing things no one thought it would do and doing them much more quickly. So we want to see, we know we don't know a lot. We need to be open to that. And that's sort of guided a lot of my ethos in thinking about how to do this. And then finally, future orientation, thinking about reflecting towards the future. And there's a focus on transfer and scalability. So we definitely want anyone who gets our micro-credential to be involved in continuing professional development with our universities, to help share knowledge, to help with publishing, whether it's a blog or an actual journal article. And the reason there's a distinction is this is going so fast, journal articles are too slow to keep up. And then, of course, scalability, our major problem at the university is student-staff ratio and all the impacts that come with that. So that was the rubric we settled on. Then I created a guidance document based on a lot of advanced HE guidance for fellowship on what staff can do to fill this up. And I'm assuming this will need an additional face-to-face or online conversation, but just some prompts to get people going in the right direction. So, you know, what are the sources that people might use to figure out why they would need this or why they would want to use this? And that's a range from what happens in class to journal articles to trade blogs, et cetera. And then we want them to think about comparing their practice with those. So what happens with an essay-based assessment and why that might change due to AIGC. And I don't know about you, but with the essay specifically, I'm still thinking this might disappear because it's there's less of a point unless you're using an AI to help organize your ideas. But all the skills that go into essay writing, it would be a tragedy if we lost those, like articulating an idea, organizing support, making it coherent to someone else across time and space. Those are all really useful skills. And if those are lost in education, that's a major loss. And frankly, when I talk to people in industry, they say, oh yeah, we see students that have AI generated, say, business plans. They come to a pitch meeting with that plan. The plan is excellent. They can't do anything with it. They don't understand how to take the next step. So thinking about taking the next step, outcomes-based, skills-based, capacities-based, that's where I'm seeing a good answer to assessment issues, or extending the timeline so it's much more authentic and much more of a portfolio where someone's developed something either using or not using AI. Not rocket science or not a breakthrough, but it's just a measured response. And this is something else. A lot of people in universities, leading them, doing development, they're really smart. We have a lot of answers that can account for this. So the sky is not necessarily falling. Or if you think about images for extinction level events, I always think of an asteroid coming for the dinosaurs. AI is not an asteroid. It is a wormhole. And there's all kinds of stuff coming through. And that's the issue. It's weirder and different, at least in my view. And then down here, just possible evidence for the planning of ethical use and bias. Thinking about what people did with integrity, and there's that spectrum put out by Advanced HE, turning in just AI generated content versus using it to check spelling, structure, grammar, and everything in between. We need to be able to show our students models of what people do or talk them through these and say, this is okay because it shows you're learning. This is not okay because it's not your work, which is, again, our academic integrity policy on fabrication of data. And then we want people to check for bias and accuracy because we know AI is not only biased, but it also hallucinates. And if you don't know what that means, it means it makes up references. Saying this now is funny because by the end of the summer, it might be much, much better because it's developing so quickly. But these are the two things we did with our micro-credential. You are welcome to use it. You are welcome to give it. I can't remember how many we have. I think it's 1,000. So you can have 500 if you want. I don't think we will use 500, and I don't think you will. But the idea is we'd love for this to become good practice in recognizing and sharing information or practice about how universities are dealing with AI, and also sort of feedback on how people are talking to staff would be welcome back to us. But yes, this is all for staff, and all of the micro-credentials we've been thinking about are staff-oriented rather than student. Although in other places in our university, we're looking at student-oriented micro-credentials. Any questions or comments there? Okay, second thing we did, the Sandbox, the research fund for student staff exploration of generative AI in higher education. I've already set the context by talking about the Student Computing Club coming to our university and saying, we want to do this, will you help us? And my answer was, yes, this sounds awesome. You guys are already giving us a model of partnership, and so we're going to take it. So as a response to the Student Computing Club, we are going to fund 15 undergraduates. They are all members of said club as research assistants for the next academic year. And they will each get a faculty advisor, which will hopefully be distributed across the university according to discipline, because different disciplines will be concerned with different AIs. Gross example, English, probably textual, design, probably image and 3D based, and so on. So we want to know what students are doing, what AIs can do to positively impact student learning. The same club already created an AI plugin called Chat PDF, which is for their English language classes. And remember, most of our students are Chinese, so this is an issue for them. They hate these classes, and they're not very valuable to them. They're not related to their degrees primarily. So they created study guides and like sort of quizzes using AI to help them learn, or maybe to help them respond to assessments. I'm not sure if that's equivalent to learning, but we're already seeing students do some cool stuff that wasn't cheating with AIs. And so we were very impressed with that. And then what can we do to not only enhance assessment and instructor workloads, but frankly, get rid of bullshit. If there's a bunch of stuff we're asking students to do that has no value, and then staff have to mark that for hours and hours in a very tight deadline or timeline, we want that to change, because we want to help use this to bring sense back. And then finally, what changes are just necessary, because AI is going to sort of be a wave that wipes out some things, possibly the essay or other things. So who has the time and excitement and energy to do this? The students. Who wanted to do this? The students. So this will probably need us to be doing a lot more on AI literacy with this group and with the faculty group. We're already doing this type of thing, and we'll be doing more. The focus is both on what are the outputs we would like, whether they come or not doesn't really matter, as well as prompt engineering, because in the next few years, the people that are most successful using AI are probably going to know how to use it better. And if you've played with AIs, it makes a huge difference if you understand how to prompt and how to prompt the specific AI you're working with. I don't have it here, but I was using the image generator on Padlet, because that was the AI I had access to in China, to try to illustrate the Zhuangzi, which is like a 5th century BCE Chinese philosopher that's very wacky. An AI is not going to give me images matching that time period. So it was really fun to go through and thinking, oh, I'm actually learning a lot about, say, Warring States aesthetics by trying to create an accurate image through different prompts. So we've already asked the China Studies Aesthetics instructors to think about using this tool or one like it to help students learn. So there are places where it's a lot cooler than what they're doing. Rather than reading and looking at pictures, they can be making these pictures and learning, what do I have to put in here, which will include, the aesthetic criteria that they will then hopefully learn by doing. And they will get immediate gratification because they will be able to make something so fast, we hope. So that's the sandbox. And I'm very happy to have an advocate that's funding this, even though it's not that much money. And this is part of the sandbox. So we're going to pair students with with staff to think about the impacts of AI across the university. And then some examples are, can we have a chat bot or digital TA? Can students use this as a digital devil's advocate or Socratic sparring partner is another term you hear in the literature. Pardon. And then can they create a lot of good revision materials and hopefully use them? Maybe use doesn't matter as much as creation, because once they've gone through the creation, hopefully they understand. And we do with this have a bunch of outputs. So we want to do some reports. We want to apply for the SAP Impact Award with CETA, I think. Do case studies and workshops across the university and hopefully publish on it. And we have a sample timeline. I don't know if we will stick to this timeline, but this was part of our proposal. So basically a very standard proposal. And again, this is public. So you want to take this and do the same or something similar. We just ask that you let us know what you did because we're curious. Then the next part, this is something I have little information about. I am told I am now part of an AI institute at our university. I am director of the Educational Development Unit. Now I sit in something called the Academy of Future Education, which is a very ridiculous name, I think, but it's there. The government told us to start this academy, as they've told us to start different academies like pharmacy and other things. So it may be that the party in China is telling us, oh, we need an AI institute now. That would make a lot of sense. So we don't know what it is yet. And what I'm hearing from senior management, they don't really know. But they do know the membership is going to be made up of the School of Artificial Intelligence, the School of Advanced Technology, and the Educational Development Unit. And you can see the bottom bullet there. This aligns with OBOR goals, or one belt, one road. So to me, thinking about my context and what I have to do being an employee of a university and of a university in China, this makes a lot of sense for larger strategic goals, and it will help from below hopefully steer this in a good direction. So this will be big, and I think, I don't know what your experience or reaction to the AI has been in the last year, but it's very clearly different from other disruptions because of the power of it. It's just amazing to put a prompt in and get something substantial, or perhaps crazy or insubstantial. That's another issue with AI, is sometimes it's really empty and vacuous, but it's long enough for a student to turn in. So yeah, we're looking at all of this, but it does seem like it's a game changer. So that's why we've been so busy with thinking about how to respond to it. I will add here with this AI Institute, School of AI and School of Advanced Technology for our university are at the top of the list. When I started the working group, I insisted that both those groups take part, but they did so minimally. So we didn't have AI experts at the beginning, or if we did, they were unable to interact with us as we wanted. I don't think that's the right way to go. I think you need people that are real data scientists also. What we're really asking here is, with the ubiquity of AI, what's going to be lost and what do we want to keep? And, you know, some people in the tech industry, the utopians, are saying, oh, we can now choose what work we want to do. I don't think that's true. Because you can see now people are still digging ditches while AI is sitting around writing poetry. But what is valuable about our degrees? And what changes do we have to make? And really, again, COVID supercharged blended and digital learning. Perhaps this will supercharge outcomes-based learning, student capabilities, and like what we call the soft skills now, because those seem to be the ones that are time resistant, whereas the hard knowledge is all become irrelevant. So I think, as thinking about being values led, we need to think about this. And then, as I keep saying, this is an opportunity for us to think about students as partners, authentic assessment, and other things. So that's just some of the things we've been doing and some of the issues. Some of this is based on what Edinburgh and Napier did. And maybe you've seen their Padlets where they said AI and me, and asked students to fill up a Padlet with just how they were using it in an anonymous forum so they could learn. So we're also working with Edinburgh and Napier on this. So that'll be really fun. And that is the state of what we are doing. Thank you.